Are you a farmer or butcher ready to master direct-to-consumer marketing and meat success? Then you're in the right place. I'm Jared Aachen, the founder of ChopLocal. Each episode of this podcast features interviews with farmers and butchers who have built successful direct-to-consumer meat businesses, and they're going to share their secrets for success with you. From actionable tips to inspiring stories, this podcast has ingredients you will need to succeed in the meat business. After the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on social. And check out the rest of our educational resources at ChopLocalUniversity.com. Now, let's turn it over to my business partner, Katie, to get started.
Everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Meat Success Podcast. We are back in our regular format this week, interviewing one of our ChopLocal vendors. I'm Katie Olthoff. I'm the co-founder of ChopLocal and ChopLocal University. And if you've been around ChopLocal University for a while, you may be familiar with Teresa because she has been on some of our webinars with us. Teresa Davis from West 40 Market in Ankeny, Iowa. She has a lot of great experience, and I'm excited to talk to her today about it. So thanks for hopping on with us, Teresa.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's start out. Some people may have heard this story before, but West 40 started out as a farmer's market vendor at the downtown Des Moines Farmers Market. And then during kind of the COVID pandemic, you launched or moved into a brick and mortar permanent location, right? Give us that rundown.
Yeah, maybe not the wisest decision looking back, I don't know, with COVID and all the crazy things, but I was actually laid off from my corporate job, which is kind of what caused me to maybe expedite the process of opening up a brick and mortar. But it was something that I just for a really long time thought was so badly needed in the areas. If you knew a local farmer and could drive out to their farm and get some stuff, that's fine, you had access to it. But really for the majority of the community, they just didn't have access, a brick and mortar they could walk into 365 days a year and access this meat. And I also just thought it'd be really cool to have an outlet for some local farmers and vendors or local businesses in the area that typically do farmers markets to kind of have that outlet year round. And so that's kind of the premise and idea of that was spinning in my head for a very long time, but had obviously the solid corporate job and the really good paycheck. And, it was too scary for me to walk away on my own. And so they laid me off. So
And it worked out. It worked out in the end, right?
But yeah, so it was during the COVID pandemic, kind of towards the tail end of it, that I really started to find a spot to put this brick and mortar and just build it from the ground up from just kind of an idea and maybe a little dream and a little bit of motivation too.
So let's talk about the location. It's in a suburb of Des Moines, a pretty affluent suburb, I would say, still growing pretty quickly. Kind of went through a big growth boom, I would say, maybe closer to 2000. I don't know, but it seems like it's still growing. Your shop is located in what I call like the old downtown area. They call it the Uptown District now, but to me, it's like the old fashioned downtown, stop signs at every corner, no stoplights, that type of thing. How did you decide to put your shop there versus maybe one of the literally dozens of strip malls that are in Ankeny?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that you kind of put it that way because I had a lot of people also maybe reverse just a little bit. Mind you, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I had never owned a business before. I had no idea how to even find a broker, to find a storefront. Like I really had no idea. So I had a very dear friend that owned a business in Ankeny and she kind of was helping me along the way. But I mean, square footage wise and how much you pay, like no clue. So if you're out there and you have absolutely no idea, it's fine. Everything's fine. So, but I had a lot of people that were saying, oh gosh, you should be on, I'm just going to use, for example, Delaware, which is like a really main thoroughfare through Ankeny and incredibly congested, incredibly busy. There's like there's studies I think that have said something like 100,000 vehicles go by on a daily basis, like something just crazy, right? And so a lot of people were like, well, that's where you need to be, right? And I've heard people tell me or say before in the past that more traffic doesn't mean more business. They aren't necessarily stopping. A lot of that is people just flowing through, and you think of how busy and congested it is. And when you're in busy, congested roads, you're not necessarily looking and seeing what's on the left and right of you. You're trying to focus to get out of there, right? And so I had no idea really about anything that Ankeny had to offer. I had no idea about this little uptown area. But I had, like I said, a friend that was kind of helping me scope out a couple of options. And this one, where I'm at currently, came up. And this might sound like really crazy or maybe even cliche. So I grew up in a town of about 1,000 people in northern Iowa. Old brick buildings, some of them, most of them full when I was growing up, but most of them empty now, and kind of people in and out, businesses in and out, kind of struggling, right? So I drive into this uptown area and it's like it's the old downtown of Ankeny. And so it's like kind of centered or nestled in the middle of all these residential building or houses, right? So you're driving and you're like, where am I? Like, this is ridiculous. Where am I going? And then all of a sudden you kind of it opens up and there's this cute little area, this little shopping area, this little district, basically. And it was old little brick buildings. At the time, quite a few of them were still empty. There were some restaurants, It was like maybe a Tuesday and there were like 5 or 6 cars kind of slowly driving through there. Most of the parking spots were empty. And I literally said to myself, it looks like home. Like, it reminded me of my hometown. And that's how I decided on it. And that might be the worst way to decide something. I don't know. But for me, it felt like home. And so that to me was just somebody kind of pushing me and saying, I think this is a good fit for you. And I've been there for 4 years. And even just in the last 4 years, the uptown area has grown exponentially. I mean, it's crazy how much it's grown. And it's so cool now because on a Tuesday, the streets aren't empty anymore. The streets are full. And it's just really, really cool to see. So obviously, hindsight, glad I chose that spot. But at the time, it was just kind of a gut feeling, quite honestly. So
That's super interesting. It does seem like the obvious location for a brick and mortar is like a strip mall with a great big parking lot and, busier, especially in the type of city that you're in. Like you said, there's so much traffic. But you're absolutely right. When I am on that road, I don't want to turn on and off of that road unless I have to. Like, you can barely switch lanes if you need to, and it's kind of a mess. Whereas when you go to the uptown area, you're in a little walkable downtown, slower pace. It does give you feelings of nostalgia, similar to when you think about buying directly from farmers. You get that same kind of warm, fuzzy feeling, right?
yeah, you're just right. That for me was a big one because I didn't necessarily want the massive traffic. I mean, sure, I would love for it to be crazy busy all the time, but it was really important to me that I would build those relationships. I wanted to be able to be that destination for people where it wasn't just you were passing by necessarily, but this is where I go to shop and this is why. And so for me, it was more about finding a spot that fit that, to your point, like the farmers, the getting to know you, the family, the small town feel. That was kind of all part of that and the feel that I wanted, not necessarily thousands of cars driving by every day. And it's neat to look back because, at the time I wasn't open on Mondays and Tuesdays because those were the only days I had to actually run to the locker myself. And it was a one-woman show. Now I'm open 7 days a week. And a lot of my retail partners on either side of me in the building that I'm in aren't open on those days. And I'm still busy. And so it's really cool to see that people are intentionally coming to shop there. It's not just that traffic that's driving by. It's we are going to West 40 and then, yeah, we might walk around uptown, and see all the other things, but it's intentional for them to go there, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but the feeling of it. I remember the first time that I came into the shop. It was actually, I think, after hours, and I was delivering Thanksgiving turkeys for you. And I remember leaving the back of my car wide open while I went to deliver turkeys, and not a feeling of like, oh my gosh, I have, there's so many crazy people around that I need to lock my car up and can't leave. It was just like I was in my hometown too. So I love it. Love it. The Uptown District, you guys have your own kind of association, kind of like your own chamber of commerce, or not?
We do. We have an association. I'm actually president of the association currently. I've been on the board for, almost 4 years since I went to or joined Uptown. I was eager to be a part of all of it. And so they asked me to be on the board and I've just kind of worked my way up then to the president spot. So that I am currently the president of our association. We are a 501c3, which, that's a whole nother ballgame and a lot of things I'm learning about. But it's really cool because we depend on some small grants here and there, but we really depend on our community to fuel us and to keep the uptown area going and to allow us to be able to put on a handful of really, really cool events, some of them dating years and years back to, people that have lived in Ankeny for a long time, remember going when they were kids and now they're taking their kids kind of thing. And so we put on some really great events, but we depend almost completely on community donations, sponsorships, things like that to be able to do that. And so it really is that community feel in that area, which is neat too. But yeah, being able to not only have a business there, but then to be a part of the growth of the entire area and the entire community really has been really cool. So,
Yeah, that's neat. And I think that that's something that people can take away is if they're looking for a location, look to see what those supports are. You know, if you're looking at a small town, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or whether there is a neighborhood group or something like that, what types of special events happen in that area throughout the year to bring in new customers, all of those types of things. I know at one point you and I were talking about farmers markets, and you said kind of the same thing when you were choosing farmers market locations or farmers markets to take part in. Look to see what those organizers are doing to support the vendors and to bring in new customers and that type of thing.
yeah, for me, it's always been there's plenty of mouths to feed and we're kind of all in it together. I've always maintained that. And as hard as that sometimes is, when you see your competition out there, I go back and remind myself that like the census just came out for Ankeny, I think last week it was, and it's almost 76,000 people. And yet, so many of us know each other by name. I mean, I already do, and I've only been there for almost 5 years. And so I remind myself of that it really takes all of us working together, supporting each other, encouraging each other, sharing best practices, all the things. There's plenty of people out there to feed. So I don't think we have to worry about any of that.
Any competition. Yeah, I love that. So, speaking of like other businesses, your parents in your hometown, your parents have the farm, they raise the beef that is sold at West 40, but they also own the little grocery store there. Do you feel like their experience with that little grocery store helped prepare you for what you're doing in your shop?
Not really.
Okay. Like maybe leading up to it, did it give you more confidence just knowing that they had been, that they have a brick and mortar or not really at all?
No, it actually kind of almost happened about the same time. They purchased that about a year and I want to say about a year and a half or so before I opened up my store. But they had obviously a little bit of business going in the green community where they sold the beef, and it kind of all just slowly transpired that way and kind of ballooned or snowballed from there. And so the cool thing though is that now we share a lot of best practices back and forth, especially now that I really am kind of getting my feet on the ground, and I'm going into almost 5 years now and of kind of doing this. And so we're able to share those best practices. It's interesting because they also have just a very different market there from where I am, the community and the lifestyle and all of that in rural northeastern Iowa is very different than what it is in a 75,000 plus suburb of Des Moines. And so that's always been kind of interesting for us to figure out, we want the same experience. We want people to experience the same quality of items at both locations. And we've allowed obviously that to happen with the website too. So through ChopLocal, they have an option of ordering on there and being able to pick it up either in Green or our Ankeny location. And we go up to Green once a week and take orders up there. And so that's been kind of neat too. But yeah, we definitely throw ideas back and forth with each other and talk about a lot of things, but they are just a little bit of a different setup than what I am, with being just an actual full scale grocery store that's been there for 80 plus years. And I'm obviously kind of trying to blaze a little bit of a trail here and do something a little different. So.
Yeah. So when you opened the brick and mortar, when you opened West 40 Market, what were some of the challenges that you faced that you didn't really anticipate?
I think the biggest thing is that, well, first of all, there's a lot of people out there, maybe some advice is maybe the direction I should go. There's a lot of people out there that are really good at a lot of different things, and it's okay that you're not. And I remember I kind of interviewed an accountant early on to help me, and I will never forget, he looked at me and he's like, I just don't understand how you can own a business and not be good at accounting. But yeah, so I think that maybe that, there were a lot of challenges early on. There still is, quite honestly. But I think my biggest thing is that maybe at first I felt like I had to figure it all out myself. And don't do that. Find some really, really good people. And it's okay. It's okay if you have to go through 2 or 3 accountants before you find one that you really click with, and financial planner and everybody else. But find really good people that are in your corner that work to understand your business and your goals and have them help you to be able to kind of put it all together and piece it all together. And I'm still working on doing that as we kind of grow the West 40 brand and all of that. But yeah, I just, maybe feeling that feeling of you should know how to do it all is a big thing. You're not ever going to know how to do it all. And I also think that just start somewhere. I think for a lot of us, we don't start and we don't do things because we're scared. There's fear there. And so a lot of times we don't take that step forward. And so I think for me, it was just kind of pushing through that even if I needed to reach out to somebody to kind of help me out a little bit. But you got to have a village, just like you have to have a village to raise kids. You got to have a village to own a business, I think.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And also the idea of that fear keeping you from trying something or doing something. Sometimes I feel like I want to hire an expert in a certain area, but I'm also afraid that if they are not effective, that I've just wasted a lot of money because that expert costs a lot. And so it is really hard. But I guess one thing that has helped me along the way is just knowing that if I click with them, obviously personality doesn't equal skills, but if it's somebody that I feel like respects me and I can work with them, then that helps a lot. It helps us go a lot further because then I'm going to feel more comfortable to ask questions or to say, hey, this isn't really working the way that I expected. What can we do differently, or can you explain this to me or something like that? So
Yeah, and I think, it can sometimes take multiple people to get there. I'm 4.5 years in, and I'm still meeting people that I'm like, I want you on my team. You know what I mean? And then you kind of have to go back and be like, okay, well, old person, this maybe just isn't quite clicking, but I found somebody and it's okay to do that. I think you should do that. It's okay to kind of evolve through that and figure it out as you go, but certainly having some really good people in your corner. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta do it, just go for it, just start, and you're going to fall 1,000,001 times, and that's okay.
the other thing I think you'll agree with is like the value of creating those relationships is sometimes you meet those people and you're like, I don't know where you fit in exactly, but sometime I know that we're going to work together, like even if it's not a formal work together, but it's just we become friends and we become, I'll give an example. When I met Andrea from Dinner Delights, I met her at an event, and it was just one of those moments where I was like, this is somebody that I like, this is my person that, like we think the same way about a lot of different things. She's actually hilarious. I think that's what drew me to her originally. And at the time, like I didn't really have a way to work with her, but eventually I introduced her to you, and now you guys work together. Andrea does freezer meals and she does side dishes to go along. Like you guys are working on April side dishes, or sorry, Easter side dishes right now, right? So that people can buy their ham from you or their meat from you, and then they can get their side dishes from you as well through Andrea. So the value of those relationships, is just so important. And when you start to build your business and you start to get those people in your corner, whether it's a formal working relationship or not, I think that can really pay off in the long run. And I think after both of us, about 5 years in business for ChopLocal too, we're seeing that same thing that you're seeing.
Yep, you're spot on. It's good to have a lot of people in your corner and just maybe a lot of acquaintances, because I think sometimes you tend to either go back. It's even like Mark Putney, right? That used to work at ChopLocal. I just got a text from somebody this morning and they're like, hey, Mark, send me your way for X, Y, and Z. And so just keeping those relationships going too. If you find somebody that you're like, to your point, I think you're going to be a good egg for me, or you kind of click with them. Like it may not make sense in the moment, but I think it certainly will later on. So
yeah, definitely. So are there any major things that you look back and you're like, if I was starting West 40 Market, the brick and mortar again, if I was doing this over, this is what I would do differently?
Oh man, where to start on that one? Seriously, I made a lot of mistakes early on. I'm maybe going to be a little bit vulnerable in this one and maybe transparent. So I am just really digging in and figuring out my pricing. So to anybody out there, you don't have to have it all together.
We talk to people who stress a lot about their pricing before they set up their ChopLocal store, and they spend a lot of time thinking about it. And sometimes we're like, you know what? It's adjustable. You can always change it. So let's just see what happens. And then you can start to see what your average order value is and what your shipments are costing you. And that's part of the problem, is that everybody's cost of production is different, and everybody has a little bit of a different approach towards figuring out their pricing. So you are almost 5 years in and you're now really digging in to your pricing.
I am. And it's interesting because it kind of goes back to our previous conversation. I met somebody that was on as a financial guy on our board, the Uptown Association. And he was volunteering to be on there and he was helping us with some of the financials. And we happened to we built a relationship over a couple of years, being in meetings and stuff together, and happened to be just having a conversation. And he's like, you know what? I think I have something that might help you with that. And he went and literally 3 or 4 days later sent me this whole tool that he had built based off of our conversation. And we kind of tweaked it a few times. I mean, out of the goodness of his heart too. Like, that's what I mean. Like, just those relationships. And currently I'm not going to ask him to obviously do 1,000,001 things for me, but that was almost kind of a gift from him to me, of saying, I can help you. And I'm just going to do this one thing for you and it's going to be great. And it really was. And it really started to allow me to have a better control. I think that's the thing, a better control and understanding of the ins and the outs, where all my costs were going, what I was actually bringing in, where I could tweak things and adjust things, just really shining a light on some important things. And to your point, I kind of just started with what I thought I knew. And as a one-woman show for the most of the last 5 years, basically, you don't have a lot of time to put into some of that. And some things just kind of got put on the back burner. And that's, for some people, might have just fallen out of their chair hearing me say that. Pricing got put on the back burner for me. But I was just trying to build this business and keep afloat and do all the things. And now I'm like really digging in and being like, how can I be strategic, right? Now I'm kind of getting to the point where it's like, I need to grow the business. And we're getting to there's a lot of transitions happening and a lot of growth, big growth happening with West 40 this year. And so I'm like, I got to be on it, right? I have to be in with my pricing and all the things and to kind of dive in and do that. So if I could do it all over again, I would have met this guy 5 years ago and he would have helped me then.
I think it's really funny, and I think our listeners will catch this too. I think it's kind of ironic that you were like, not that you said this exactly, but we were saying like, accounting's not the only skill you need to run a business, right? And then you come in and you're like, I haven't really paid a lot of attention to my pricing until now. But it goes to show that there are different strengths. There are many different pieces of the business that come in together. We did the same thing recently. We haven't talked about this a lot, but you know this, Teresa. The beginning of 2025 with government funding cuts and Doge taking another look, we have 2 USDA grants, and they basically put those on pause for a few weeks. And it really caused us at ChopLocal to do the same thing. We were looking at everything that we do, all the services that we provide, and doing a much better job of tracking how much time those services take us and what is the profit margin on them and which ones make sense to continue and which ones do we need to raise a rate on and which, so I totally get where you're at. And some of that stuff, like I said, you can create a business plan going into your business and getting ready to launch, but it is going to change because a lot of those things are estimates. You estimate how much time you're going to need to hire someone or how many employees you're going to need to hire in your shop. And you estimate how much revenue you're expected or sales you're going to do that day. And, so there's a lot of assumptions. And I think no matter what business it is, the longer that it continues, the more firm data you get to better make those decisions. So yeah, if you would have had this data 5 years ago, it would have been different too, but you didn't have the data either. So let's talk about your marketing, because recently, well, about a year ago or so, I think. So you've been on ChopLocal for 3 years or so, and I would say that is part of your marketing, is having that online store that people can shop. You've always done your own social media, or I guess maybe you had some help here and there. But about a year ago, we launched email marketing for you. And I think that's been very effective from what I've seen. I feel like when we create a weekly email for you with your weekly special, we send that out. You typically get some orders right away from that. But let's backtrack to when you first started. What did you do differently with marketing then? And how has that evolved over the years? And I'm even thinking back to, I know that you did some local television ads. What other things like that did you do at the beginning that you don't necessarily do now? Would you do it again? Would you advise it?
Yep. So I did a TV thing, and I didn't pay for that. It was them. They actually had asked me, which was really nice.
I didn't realize that. That is very nice.
I got a 15, I don't know, maybe 10-minute slot. It wasn't that long, but yeah, over the lunch hour, which was kind of cool. I invested in some random things throughout the last 5 years that I kind of just wanted to try and I'd learn from, right? I mean, you don't really know from a marketing standpoint, you don't really never know. And I remember, I think for almost an entire year, I did TV ads on, I think it was Fox 17, Channel 17 over the lunch hour. And then I think there was like an afternoon run, maybe two, or an evening run. And so it was a monthly thing that I paid for. The interesting thing is that I never really, especially looking back, I never really, I don't think I saw anything from that.
Or you don't know. It's hard to measure TV, right? It's not like an email,
Yep. You couldn't track it. And so I've had some people approach me on that over the last couple of years. I haven't done it because I just didn't feel it was overly effective. It was hard for me to track, obviously. And so that's, when we transition to the email, I think that's helpful because we can track that more. It's, a little bit more, we can understand how they're clicking, what they're buying, all the things. And quite honestly, like I don't even really ever do paid ads on social media. It's all free. I try to get creative with my posts, but I put out there what I put out there. I'm consistent with it. I will say that. I think that that's really helpful. A lot of my weekly bundles and my specials and my holiday things, like I try to be very intentional and consistent with that too. So people know every Monday morning we're releasing a new weekly bundle, and they know that every April 1st or, whatever the date is, 30 days out from Easter, this is what happens. And Thanksgiving, this is what happens. And so I try to be really consistent with that, and also just depend a lot on people sharing. Like, I think that surprised me a lot of how many, at first I did kind of a promoter discount and kind of picked a handful of people that were, seemed to have a really good following on social media and really active, and they shopped in the store. And so I said, hey, for X amount of discount on things, will you tag me? And then over time, I started to realize that, well, wait a minute, I'm also getting tagged by a lot of people that I don't give a discount to. So I kind of started to look at that, and we're actually just now rolling out an affiliate program. So that kind of forced us to go back and look at that and say, okay, so how can we do something different and something bigger and better and be able to track it? And, there's a few of us that reap the benefits of that. And so, yeah, I think it's a lot of trial and error, quite honestly. But the radio ads, I did not find success in, as far as I know. That's also people having to come in and say, oh, I saw you on TV, and I don't know how many people. But it's not like I saw a big spike in people coming in shopping and when those would run either. So, yeah, social media, I think, is a huge one. That platform is huge. But, I also look at it and say, well, what if, and it's happened a few times, what if Instagram goes down tomorrow? What if Facebook crashes tomorrow? And so I think that's where our conversation a little over a year ago came about the newsletters of I've got to find another way to reach these people, and especially those that aren't on social media, of how am I communicating effectively with that group of people? So,
yeah, definitely. And when you talk about social media, you are heavier on Facebook, or your Facebook posts feed to your Instagram too, but they're really more designed for Facebook. You're not doing reels typically. You're mostly doing static posts with links in them, correct?
Yeah, the reels and all of that, and building my Instagram, I think, was on the list for 2025 as a priority, but I don't know if I might have to push that to 2026. I don't know, but if I could find somebody that could do reels for me really well and, we could run with it, then sure. But I think right now we have some decent traction with Facebook, and I think a lot of my audience tends to be, at least for now, tends to be more on Facebook. So yeah, I'm not really a real person.
I'm not as much of an Instagram or Reels person either, so I totally get it. Sierra on our team, she's the Reels expert. And it's so funny because it just seems like it's so much more innate to her. But I think it's because she's younger and that's what she uses. And so it just comes more naturally to her to think of ideas and to film content and things like that. So when you first started, and I know the goal is always to continue growing, but was there a period of time where you felt like, or a milestone where you were like, okay, I feel like I made it, or I feel like I've reached my initial goals and now we can continue to grow. I feel like a lot of business owners, you start out and there's going to be a period of it's not quite working yet, right? Well, you figure it all out. But how long did that take you before you got to the point that you felt like things were going well?
To be brutally honest with you, I'm not there yet. I'm not. So, and that's how my brain and my competitive nature, I think, and that's also just who I am. That's how I've always been, of like, there's always more. There's always more that I can do tomorrow. It's not that I don't celebrate my successes. Every single day I look back and say, well, gosh, today wasn't the best sales day, but man, a year ago would have been, a fraction of that. And so I try to always remind myself of the growth that I'm having, because the way that I'm molded and wired, I'm always, at the end of the day, I'm always like, yeah, it was okay, but gosh, I could have done better. Or man, I can't wait until it's like this, X, Y, and Z. But you said something in there and you said, I think, at what point did you know that you kind of made it or that it was going to work or something like that? And quite honestly, I will confidently say that my open house when I first opened for me was like, I think I really do have something here, because I was blown away. Like literally hundreds of people showed up that I didn't know in a community that I had literally just moved to 2 months before that. And it was crazy. I mean, shelves were emptied out and it was nuts. And so I had, at the time I had 3 coolers, I think. Half of the store that I currently have now, because I've knocked down walls and things, is what actually was the retail space. And so, I mean, it was literally less than half of what I even have now, and from a shopping standpoint and options for people. But I remember locking the door that day and thinking to myself, I think it's going to be okay.
So it was a good, really early indicator of success and indicator of the support that you were going to have.
Yeah. But it also, to me, was I can't let these people down now, right? I have to carry that forward. I have to do more. I have to do better. And then, of course, it just drives you to keep doing it. But yeah, I'm the kind of person that I'll walk in every day and look at something and be like, I don't like that wall there. I think I'm going to knock that down tomorrow.
Right. And put more local products in there. So you've done a lot of partnerships with obviously farmers. So the beef comes from your parents, but then you've worked with other Iowa farmers to get pork, chicken, turkey, lamb, bison. And then you also bring in some other local products like sauces, meal kits, that type of thing too, right?
Yeah, and that's been part of it too, that has kind of grown a lot more than what I envisioned, a lot more than what I initially thought it would be. Think I had 6 or 7 local products on the shelf when I first opened, and now we've got over 100, which is nuts. And it's all, except for 2 different ones, it's all Iowa, which every day I'm finding something new that's done in Iowa that just blows my mind. And it's great stuff. So it kind of slowly became that, like, man, I could make this almost as much of a one-stop shop as possible for people. They can literally get just about everything other than maybe canned goods at my shop. And it's all local. Like, it's all freshly delivered. And it's just, so that's really cool. But yeah, that definitely was not, I don't think necessarily the intention. It was definitely an emphasis on the meat early on, and it really grew to wow, this could actually be so much more than that, and such an outlet for so many of those businesses, that only do farmers markets. And for me, it's a work smarter, not harder. Like, how can we partner together, and I can help you move these products and get you out there and get visibility. And we've even added some of them to the online shop so we can ship it across the nation, and so to me, like, that's where this just goes, right? Like, how can we do more and kind of just keep growing that? But yeah, it's been pretty cool to see that the non-meat side of things grow in the store. So.
And so with those local products, they're a little bit different from the meat in that most of the meat that you buy, you are buying the live animal from the farmer. You are paying for the processing, and it gets a West 40 stamp on it. For the other products, like let's say sauces and things like that, they have that brand's logo on them, obviously. Do you purchase those things outright from them at a discount? Okay. She's shaking her head yes. Yeah.
So just wholesale is how I buy it off of them. Some of them you obviously have like a minimum requirements for cases and things like that. But for the most part, the really cool thing is that a lot of them are very flexible because they just really appreciate and they acknowledge the fact that I'm a small shop too, right? And so I look at that and say that's the partnership, right? Of how can we just keep things moving and not necessarily say, do you need a pallet or do you not need a pallet? It's like, don't really need 80,000 cases of something or jars of something, but 2 cases at a time, a lot of them will work with me to be able to do that, which is cool.
Yeah, that is really nice. I know that's one question we get asked by farmers a lot is if I wanted to put my meat into a shop like a grocery store or a gas station or something, do they buy it from me? Do I own the freezer? Do I retain ownership of the meat and they pay me a commission, But I think the system that you've worked out, most of these farmers are not selling direct to consumer themselves, so they're not necessarily trying to build a brand. Like I'm thinking of your pork farmers, for example. So you just buy the animals from them. They're happy to be able to sell them to you instead of the sale barn, and it works out great, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Your clientele, I looked at ChopLocal overall. It's about 50-50 male, female. I've never looked at your stats specifically, but do you feel like you lean more heavily towards males or females in the shop?
In the shop, I would say females. It also maybe depends on the season. Summertime, I get a lot more maybe guys roaming in to grab some steaks or some beef sticks to, to munch on. It might be pretty close to being about an even split, but I think for the most part, I do see a little bit heavier on the female side. The shoppers, right? They're going out and getting all the groceries. That goes back to that being a one-stop shop kind of thing. And so it's them with the list of what they're getting. And so it's not just, you're kind of your what you would maybe stereotype as a manly cut. It's not just that. We just offer, I think, so much in such a variety that it's a shopping experience for both males and females. But we have a really cool boutique next to us that the ladies in Ankeny are crazy about. And so it's always kind of fun. And we always joke with the guys because they'll just kind of be roaming around in the store really slowly. And I'll just be like, she's over at Real Deals, isn't she?
Yeah. It is a fun boutique.
We gotta get like a couch and a TV back here for you guys just to chill out and hang out while
Seriously, and they can eat their beef sticks right while they're sitting there, right? You've mentioned in the past that sometimes the women will order online for pickup, and then their husbands are the ones picking it up on their way home from work or something like that. Do they make impulse purchases when they come in to do their pickup, or a lot of times is it really just in and out and they're done?
It kind of depends. It's actually interesting because I have regulars that shop online that the husbands are just in and out. I know that they're going to come straight in, they're going to get what they need, and they're going to go straight out just like they were told. But I honestly, I would say a large percentage, they shop around. We've got a big table of bread right in front when you walk in, and usually that captures somebody's attention. But they, or they'll be like, hey, maybe the spouse or whatever will say, I need, grab X, Y, and Z while you're in there because they know that we carry it, but it's not on the online store. And so we'll get that too. But yeah, the online has been really big for us just to get people traffic in the door, especially holiday season, because yes, they're coming in with the intention of picking up something they already ordered and paid for, but confidently, I'll say 9 times out of 10, they buy something else while they're in there, and it could just be at the register while they're waiting for us to get their order and they see a couple things that, catch their eye, a couple treats or something, but they usually shop and grab at least 1 or 2 other items. So.
Yeah, I think online, was such a smart move for you. The other way that I talk about it when I'm talking to other farms or butcher shops, talking to them about what online can do for them is, especially the way you talked about your location, that it's a little bit out of the way. You do have to drive through the residential areas to get there. It's not just like, oh, I'm driving by and I glance at it. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to stop there. So I feel like when people place an order online, it's like they are setting an appointment to come in, and they have an obligation at that point then to come in, and they've already made their purchase and given you their money. So now they're going to have to go and pick it up, and maybe they buy more while they're there, which you said 9 out of 10 is phenomenal. Maybe they don't, but either way, they've made a purchase from you that they might not have done if they had just waited to see if I have time after I pick up my kids from baseball. They might not have had time. It might not have worked out, but now they're going to be there. So.
Yep, I would agree with that. And, we've expanded our hours a little bit just in the last couple of months as we've kind of been able to grow the team. But, before that, the online was a convenience piece too, because we did have a little bit limited hours, especially again, when it was just me and I was only open for 4-ish days a week. So that for them was a way to at least get their shopping done and like get in right at 4:45 on their way through, on going home or something like that to grab it. And so I would say it kind of started that way with me for like, that was my intention of just the convenience piece of it and kind of compromising a little bit with not having extended hours. It's definitely grown into a lot more than that, but I think that that's the other piece too. It's just really convenient. We think of all the things we order online. And so for me, it's like, why don't you order your stuff at West 40 online too, right? And we can make it easy just like Target or Walmart does. So.
How much does seasonality, you mentioned that a little bit, that sometimes their impulse purchases might depend on season, or male versus female might depend on season, but are there seasons of the year that are really good for you in the shop and seasons that are rougher, or have you seen a pattern like that?
It's interesting that you asked that because this year, 2025, was very different for us than what it has been the other, previous 3 full years that we've been there. Typically, you'll start to ramp up for the spring and summer and people get all excited, and you have farmers market and you have everybody buying steaks and wanting to be outside and all the things. And then you kind of get through the craziness of the holidays. And then like January, February, March, you're just like, am I going to make it? Right. And the really cool thing for us this year is that January, February, March wasn't like that. In fact, we obviously saw the usual slowdown a little bit after the holidays, but it stayed very, very steady and consistent, which was so cool. It's got me in a little bit of a panic for getting ready for spring and summer. And that's where we're just, I think, having some growing pains, which all good. But yeah, so I mean, certainly we have a little bit of, I would say, downtime, but downtime is still, shelves are clearing out and we're keeping really, really busy, which is cool. So it's been a little bit different year. And I think that saying that, I will say for people that experience those really highs and really lows, it's not always going to be that way. It doesn't always have to be that way. And don't assume that it should be that way. I think that's the thing too, is that don't let up off the gas. Just because the holidays are over and you're exhausted, like, I don't care. Get up and get going.
Keep going, right?
Like keep that momentum going as much as you possibly can and be creative to find ways to get people out when it's negative 20 degrees and they don't want to go, or do some fun things online to just get some attention. I mean, I don't know. I hop in freezers all the time and do ridiculous things and people love it. I don't
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder, we had a relatively mild January, February, I feel like. And so I wonder if that made a difference in just people being out and about more. There just weren't so many days that you couldn't literally navigate the streets because of snow this year. So,
what's funny though, Kate, is that there was a couple days and one day in particular there was a blizzard and I was the crazy one that was open that day just because I live right up the street and I happened to just be in the store working. So I was like, I might as well just be open. And it was actually a really decent sales day.
well, okay. So you never know, I guess, huh?
You just never know. I'm not advocating for people to go out in the blizzard and be open, have their business open by any means. But for me, it's just a don't assume, don't assume that nobody's going to be out and about, or don't assume that just because it's a rainy, dreary day that it's going to be a quiet day. Because sometimes those are the days that people are like, I just need to get out of the house. And they might go out and go shopping. So, but.
Or like, my mood is down a little bit and I need this specific cut so that I can make this specific meal that is comfort food for me or is going to make me feel good, right?
Yeah. Yep, totally.
All right, last topic I want to cover is you get to be face to face with your customers a lot. Have you ever been able to come up with kind of, not necessarily a list, but we talk about your target customer, what is important to them? Do you have a good feeling for what is important to the people who come into West 40 Market, or things that you might use to describe them? For example, maybe they are higher income, maybe they have families, maybe they, do they value how the meat was raised, or do they value more that they're purchasing from a local business that's in this uptown district, or those types of things?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, I would lean heavily on they care where their food comes from. They like knowing where their food comes from. Maybe I should kind of phrase it that way. I think from a wealth standpoint, I would say that's not the case. And I don't want to say this in a way that's going to be maybe wrong, but there's some people that I know that they make a lot of money that don't shop, but they also don't place value, I think, on the really wanting to know where their stuff comes from. They're big Walmart or Target or Hy-Vee, and that's perfectly fine. And I've always maintained that I'm just going to educate you on what I have. I'm going to give you these options, and you choose what's best for you and your family. So I think that the people that are coming in shopping, they care where their food comes from. I also think that they, in my opinion, I think that they want to have a relationship with the person that's selling their food. And I know that I'm not the farmer, but I can help them understand where it comes from. And I think that I hope that I've created a space for them that they feel comfortable buying from me. They feel comfortable when they ask me a question and I answer, that they trust that, and then just providing for me also, it's just service. And I think that, I don't know if it's just kind of where we're at in day and age and stuff, but I think people really care about that, and quite honestly, like that's just how I grew up. Like in a small town, like y'all took care of each other, and you walked in and it was like, oh, hey, Johnny, and you knew each other's names and you'd converse and you built a relationship with your customers. And that is incredibly important for me. And so I work really, really hard to do that. And I think that while, yes, we have a really great high quality products that we sell there, I really think that a lot of my repeat customers, sometimes more than once a week they're coming in, are because we've built that relationship with them, and I'm the same way when I shop. Like I'm going to intentionally go to a Casey's that I have gotten to know the people that work there, and they treat me like I'm the only person that has ever walked in that door, right? They make me feel all warm and fuzzy, but I'm probably going to go out of my way to go to that Casey's because I love that feeling. And I just think a lot of people like that. And so combo of, of wanting to know where your food comes from, but also just building trust in a relationship with customers. And again, that kind of circles all the way back to putting the store where I put it and that small town community feel and just in building it from there. So
Yeah. I think there's a couple things that I want to touch on there. Is one, you mentioned how you like climb in freezers, and you have this photo on Facebook of you, I think, in your daughter's little like Hot Wheels car, whatever those are called. And you're like, beep, beep, do you know we make deliveries? I feel like people get to know you via social media as well. And so that helps build that relationship as well. They feel like, I already kind of know Teresa. She seems like a fun gal, The other thing I was going to ask though is, do they ask you really specific questions, or do you feel like it's more like they know that they can get the answers to the questions, and so just knowing that they could get the answers gives them enough peace of mind that they don't even actually ask the questions? Does that make sense at all?
it does. Yeah. And I would say it's kind of maybe a toss up between the two. I definitely get specific questions. I get a lot of people being like, now, how would I cook this? Or what do I do with this?
Oh, so it's about the meat. It's not like, was this given an mRNA vaccine? That's the one question that I feel like we've gotten over the past year or so is, was this animal given any vaccines? But other than that, I don't feel like people are asking very often, was it fed non-GMO feed? Things like that are really specific.
Very few actually ask me very specific questions like that. The majority of the regular customers, it's more or less a conversation of, well, now what do I do with this? And that's why, you go to my social media page and you'll see I try to really highlight a lot of everything because, first of all, I want you to know that we have it, but I want to give you ideas. And listen, I'm not a cook. I can follow a recipe and it can turn out good, but I'm not a chef by any means. And so but I want people to know that, like, listen, like, truly, if I can do it, you can do it, And so I honestly rely on what I've researched and what I've figured out, and then also just how I've done it myself and what works and what doesn't. And again, I think that also goes to the relationship piece of it too, where, I can be like, oh my gosh, I just made these meatballs a couple days ago with this ground turkey and it was phenomenal. And then I literally stand at the register with somebody. I'll be like, what's your cell phone number? And I'll like text them right over the link to the recipe that I made that we were just talking about. And they're so excited when they leave, to go try it. So
And that's why they feel like they built a relationship with you, because you are sharing your recipe, just like you would with your friends and family and whatnot. So we were talking about things that you didn't know when you started, and maybe it's accounting and you're getting a stronger handle on your numbers nowadays. But I look back to the things that I didn't know about meat because I'm not an incredibly strong cook either. And I just feel like I remember I give this example about roasts. I didn't know the difference between different roasts. And now I feel like I can give guidance based on what you're going to do with it, what you look for in a roast, that type of thing. I can tell you which roast is going to be a good fit for you. But I guess my point is that came to me gradually. It's not like I sat down and took a course on it and became an expert on it overnight. And I feel like there's a lot of these business aspects that will just come to you gradually. And at one point you'll be like, I don't know anything about that. And then 5 years later, you'll be like, I learned that somewhere along the way. And maybe I'm still not an expert, but at least I have a working knowledge of it. Do you feel the same way?
100%. Yeah. A lot of it is, I'm not afraid if somebody asks me a question and I don't know, I'll be like, you know what, let's go Google that, and we'll pull it right up, right, with them standing right there, and we'll look it up and I'll learn something too. But you're right. I mean, I was a fashion design and merchandising major in college, and then I worked in a bank for 17 years. So, I mean, I was on a farm for about 3 years of my high school days before I graduated. We didn't move until later in life, and so it's not like I really truly grew up on a farm. I didn't. I've learned a lot of this. I ask just a ton of questions. I love asking customers when they come in, especially if they're regulars that grab at the same cut of meat. I like to say, well, now how are you cooking that? That's a common question. And I even tell, like my team at the store, a lot of times when I bring somebody new on, that's their biggest fear is like, what if they ask me a question I don't know? And I'm like, cool. Like, you can either say, hey, not really sure. You can Google it. You can just tell them Teresa will call you back when she gets in or whatever. But I was like, I don't think anybody expects you to know everything when you walk in. But, if you're just honest with them and maybe try to find the answer while they're there, then that's good. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think back, I've learned so much from doing like blog posts for ChopLocal where I will do 10 recipes using, whatever cut. And of course, I'm Googling and doing research. And as I'm doing that, I'm learning these are the flavors that go well with it. These are the cooking methods, and it's just become like a gradual learning that has served me well. Who knows? 5 years from now, we might be experts in accounting. We'll just have to see, right?
I don't know about that, but yeah, we'll see.
Okay, last question related to these customers. Are some of your customers former vegans or like maybe borderline vegetarian vegans? Do they ever talk about that? Do you know?
I can think of one or two that I know that was the case. And in fact, one of them I met when I was at the Des Moines Farmers Market. She still shops at the store, but we started a relationship and, conversing, and she'd stop, even if she didn't buy stuff, she'd stop by and say hi to me at the farmer's market. And we'd start to kind of slowly talk about things, and we talk about how they're raised, and we talk about how they were harvested and all the things. And very slowly but surely she came back and she's like, I think I'm going to try like just some ground beef, and that for her was a big thing of like, it's almost like she had been scared to do it. And I even invited her to the farm. I was like, come out to the farm, come look and see, how they're raised. And that was really big for her. But I also have some that are like vegan, but their families aren't. And so they still shop in the store and they get all the things for the family, but then they always get like the bread and the goodies for themselves, or something like that. But yeah, I just maybe a couple that I can think of that I at least know, that maybe they had an issue with it, and it was more or less of how they were raised and things that they had really seen on TV or on social media versus the reality of the situation. And that helped to kind of, I don't want to say bring them back on board, but to help them kind of redirect them into a different direction. So
Yeah, that's what we've seen. Not a lot of customers, but a handful here and there who either they are vegan, but they want to give their kids the opportunity to try meat, but they want to know where that meat is coming from, how it was raised. And maybe they do have specific questions, or they were vegan for what they deemed ethical purposes. Like you said, they thought that that was the right thing to do, but they realize that meat is an important part of their diet and they need to try it out. Actually, Teresa, we interviewed a gal who would be a great social media help for you, but we got to the end of the interview and I said, now I should have asked this and I should just assume, but do you eat meat? And she said, actually, I don't. But she was young. She said, but my boyfriend is a dietitian, or he's majoring in dietetics or something, and he tells me I really need to. So I know that I need to. And when I do, I want to get it from somebody like you guys. And I was like, yes. Okay, yes, you are right. You need to eat meat and you should buy it from us, right? But that's one thing that I've seen that I just caution people to be careful with. I don't think I've ever seen you do this, but sometimes people like to bash on vegetarians or vegans. And I think those are your potential customers because chances are they might eat meat again in the future, or they are buying meat for their families and they want to know where it comes from when they do. So be ready for that, right?
yeah. Other than the T-shirt that I have in the store that says 0% vegan, I don't bash on anybody. No, I'm just.
No, and I think that T-shirt is cute, and obviously the meat eaters love it. So, right?
Yeah, I think it's, for us, it goes back to the whole just give them what you have, educate them with what you have. And it's up to everybody what they choose to feed themselves and their family. I'm just kind of here to kind of be that vessel to get it all to you and to educate you on it. And then what you choose to do with it after that is 100% in your corner. And I'll never tell you that you're doing it wrong. We have people walk in and they're like, oh man, I just got a quarter cow. And the first thing out of my mouth will be, thank you for supporting a local farmer.
Like you said, there's 78,999 other mouths to feed in Ankeny, Iowa. So
yeah. So there's plenty.
Well, thank you for getting on with us today. We always appreciate hearing your insights, especially with your business and how you've grown it. If people want to follow Teresa, check out West 40 Market, especially on Facebook. If you want to see the emails that we send out on her behalf, you can sign up for her email newsletter too. But I think if you follow her on Facebook, you'll pretty quickly feel like you have a relationship with Teresa too. So thank you, Teresa, for everything that you do.
Yeah, thank you so very much for a wonderful platform, ChopLocal.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Meat Success. We hope this episode gave you fresh insights and inspiration to beef up your meat marketing. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, Leave a review, follow us on social, and share with your fellow farmers and butchers. Have questions or ideas for future podcasts? Reach out to ChopLocalUniversity.com. Until next time, remember, there's more than one recipe for meat success.